This is Yonder Radio. How you doing? My name is Jared Iwi. I am your host, and these are Rural Conversations with National Reach. And this hour, we're doing just that again. We are going to go help save the Blackwater River in Florida. We are going to learn about maple tapping, and we have music on the way. The band Holiday Friends, they have an incredible sound. They opened for Vampire Weekend and Bastille and AWOL Nation. They know music. And now in the conversation I have with them, well, they're learning about fatherhood. I'm excited about sharing that story. And I'm even more excited, to be quite honest, to see if I can now make our news guy, Jan Patulski, laugh. This guy is stone cold news. He rides the news cycle 24/7, and he gets off just briefly to update us. So can I make this man laugh? And now he's paying attention. Jan Patulski here, news editor of the Daily Yonder. What do you bring us today?
Hi, Jared. Today we start with our own original reporting from the Daily Yonder. Julia Tilton brings us a story about the Maine Senate passing a first-of-its-kind legislation in the country to put a moratorium on data centers with power needs exceeding 20 megawatts. And the moratorium would hold until November of 2027 if signed by the Maine's governor. But that's still to be seen.
Yeah, this is big precedent setting.
Yes, and it reflects the growing concern among many states and rural populations regarding the boom in data center build out.
They call it a moratorium, but do you think it should be called a lessatorium?
Jared, you're in charge of puns. I would not dare.
This isn't what this show's about right now. We'll move on to the next story. Amazon USPS delivery issues in rural America, another divide being made. Is that what's about to happen here?
Yes, so the CNBC story reports on the proposed new agreement between Amazon and USPS that would slash deliveries by about 20%, which represents about 200 million shipments a year. The kicker for us is that a lot of the impact would be felt in rural America, where shipments take longer and are generally more costly.
And then you'd think Montana wouldn't have an air quality issue, but it is in the news. What is happening there?
There is a statewide air quality monitoring system, and recently the Montana's Department of Environmental Quality devised a program called Purple Airs in Schools that is aimed to close some of the monitoring gaps in more rural portions of the state. High schools would be installing small sensors free of charge to help monitor the quality of the air due to smoke from wildfires. Now, it's important for many reasons. One of them being that in Montana, high school sports are a really big deal, and in many cases, the air quality can significantly endanger young athletes if not monitored properly.
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering too. Exactly what was the danger of air quality? But you have all these kids outside using more air than normal. This totally makes sense out of Montana. And that has been our headlines from rural America with Daily Yonder news editor Jan Patulski.
Thanks so much, Jared.
And thank you, Jan. And first up, we have a conversation with the man. And I'm not saying this to pander. Well, maybe, because Dee Davis is the publisher of the Daily Yonder. He's the president of the Center for Rural Strategies. We welcome Mr. Davis and Celinda Lake, the head of Lake Research, as we go over results from a new poll with data on how rural voters are feeling about a lot of different issues leading up to the midterm elections in November.
I'm so interested in this poll, and maybe you could just describe, just in broad terms, what we're polling here.
Well, this is the richest poll we've done yet. This was a survey conducted online, and it was 600 likely general election voters in rural America from battlegrounds and its states. We looked at what was the mood, what's the top concern. We looked at values. We looked in depth at faith, which was really exciting and really interesting. We looked at role of government, and there's some real surprises there and some real changes. We looked at how both parties are doing and how Trump is doing. We looked at populist economics, and again, some surprises there. And then we looked at what are reactions to some of Trump's current policies. There were some real surprises here that would surprise, particularly people who haven't been to rural America in a while.
I know people are always interested in the horse race question, who's winning, who's ahead, all that stuff. But first, I was interested. The Senate battleground this time is like stretches from Alaska to North Carolina, Maine to Texas. It's so broad, but it seems like the vibe, the mood of rural voters is fairly pessimistic. There was a lot of people who were doubting democracy or worried about how democracy is working for them. There was so much uncertainty. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I think that is really the point. Rural America is pretty Republican now, but in terms of voting, they were more swing because they're so unhappy with everybody. Cost of living was and cost of things was really at the top of their agenda. One of the things that really amused me, having grown up on a ranch, people would always think, well, you can just always have dinner. You can just go to the back 40 and pick dinner up. And it's like, well, it doesn't really work that way. And the cost of food being a top concern for rural voters. And people thought the economy was not good in rural America and was getting worse. People also felt very, very strongly they dislike corruption and they think corruption is driving a lot of policies. They dislike large corporations. They think they're benefiting at the expense of rural America. And they support economic policies that protect local jobs and take on price gouging. So they're very proactive. They're unhappy with what's going on, but they're very proactive. People used to pride themselves on being able to take control of their situation, but now people feel a lot of policies are out of control. What's happening to Social Security, which they're adamantly in favor of protecting, out of their control. The tariffs, that was a number that really surprised me. The tariffs, rural voters thought overwhelmingly, have been bad for the local economy. 50%, only 24% thought they'd been good. My favorite stat, D, is actually role of government. And rural America's always been a little dubious about the role of government. But that was one of the areas where we saw some of the biggest changes. They definitely think that democracy is not working well. People were much less likely to say they prefer the government to get out of the way now than they had even a year ago. A year ago, people were pretty in favor of government getting out of the way. Now people are really divided about it.
We've been doing this rural work for almost 25 years, and it seems like when we first started doing it, over and over, I would hear, well, I'm okay, we'll be okay, but I worry about my kids. I don't know if my kids are going to be able to make it here. It seems like there's more of a sense of, I don't know if I'm okay anymore.
It used to be that rural America also thought rural America's okay, the rest of the country's in bad shape. And now people think, no, things are solidly getting worse for rural America. It used to be, I'm okay, you're not. Now it's, we're all in the same boat now.
So I know that in the last election, Trump won over 90% of the rural counties. He had 65% of the rural voter. And now it looks like his favorability is 52-46. And I mean, that's not really anything to write home about.
And it's a stunning growth in unfavorability because people usually resist saying they don't like someone they voted for. You also have a situation where this is personal favorability. This is not the job. So you could think the job's not the best job, but I like him as a person. I like his straightforwardness. Those are really high negatives with real intensity to them. 36% very unfavorable, 46% unfavorable. That is a stunning decline.
I want to ask you about the war and just basically, it seemed like whenever there's been any conflagration overseas, that rural people and you have always, they have higher volunteer rates and service rates and generally been pretty supportive. And so they're supportive here, but it's the numbers aren't overwhelming.
No, they're not. Half of rural voters, especially Republicans, support foreign intervention to advance Americans' economic interests. A lot of other voters, suburban and urban voters, don't want foreign intervention. Where the rubber really hits the road is the spending of these wars. Rural Americans pretty upset about spending too much abroad and pretty worried about the military spending also being too high abroad.
I want to talk a little bit about faith and values. There were some interesting findings here about what people thought about faith institutions in their communities, what they thought about faith leaders, what they thought about how they made up their minds about voting.
Faith was a top value, 29%, 39% among Republicans. Its importance has grown in rural America. Faith institutions like churches also very important to rural voters, especially women and especially Republicans. Faith institutions, 66% favorable, 35% very favorable. That is more favorable than any political institution out there. And people said that they thought that faith leaders understand the problems they face, that they unite rural America. They also thought that faith institutions respond to economic challenges and that during times of crisis, faith institutions help. So faith, not just a side pillar, but a central foundation of the community and relating in lots of ways that people think democracy and our political institutions are failing.
Do you see policy openings that might change the discourse with voters in rural America?
People were adamant about protecting Social Security benefits, increasing local manufacturing jobs, cracking down on price gouging, making health care more affordable. There is a very, very strong proactive issue agenda in rural America. It's a very broad agenda and a very aggressive agenda that either party could speak to and isn't right now.
Well, thanks, Linda. This was great. These were real eye openers, and I appreciate this work.
Oh gosh, thank you, Dee. And it is so exciting to bring rural voices to the table.
Dive into the data yourself as you can read about this poll at dailyyonder.com. And now, our musical guest. This is what this show provides. Listen to this variety. We're going from the data, and now we're going to take you into the world of art and music with Scott Fagerland of Holiday Friends, a band that got their start in Moscow, Idaho. Holiday Friends has opened up for the likes of Vampire Weekend, Bastille, and AWOL Nation. They are now based in Astoria, Oregon. That's their home, and also the home of the legendary movie, The Goonies. Well, I have this important conversation we need to have right away. You do really good videos that tell stories. You're in Astoria, and I think, and if you need me to come out and be a gaffer or whatever, I'm on board. But I think it's time for your band to do a Goonies parody video.
Oh, yeah. In 2014, we had actually reached out, our manager at the time reached out to try to get Corey Feldman into a music video, and their people were talking to our people, and it was almost going to happen. I don't remember why we didn't do it ultimately, but it's definitely been it's been thought about for sure.
So this is Scott Fagerland with Holiday Friends, and holidayfriendsmusic.com is an entertaining website, and you will see how busy they were in the teens. And then a hiatus. Is the band still performing, or other things in the works?
Yeah, I mean, just over the years, like things, COVID happened, and we had children around that same time, and we just slowed down and focused on what we wanted to do moving forward. And, we'd ran the gamut of touring and playing showcases and trying to get signed and all that stuff. And I think there's so many stories like ours where it starts to lose like what made it fun in the first place. And so we're just refocused on having fun. And so that just means we get together once a week and work on new material. I mean, the process of songwriting and like producing our own stuff and creating a recording has always been the most fun. And so we're just kind of low stress mode, making new songs, and we're always going to put them out there.
The top 2 causes of death for bands turn out to be the plague and children. So that you've made it to the other side is impressive.
That's right. Yeah, we're still going, just in a different sort of tempo.
Well, it's an interesting spot you're in, and this is a lot of my imagination and just history of growing up in a small town. If you're a small town band, you have to cater to such a broad demographic of people just to get an audience at any given point in time. So you got to be ready to pop off some Mellencamp and Seeger and Pat Benatar. But you're doing modern keyboard-driven top 40 hits. Are you playing gigs in small towns? Did you build a following that way?
That's a good question, because we've kind of built a little following in every town that we've spent time in. We have a ton of friends in Astoria, musicians here, and most of them play like folk music. We did always feel like a little bit on the outside, well, a lot on the outside of that scene, but we managed to still have just a good supportive community here just because it's all about friendship. Everyone here is receptive to different styles of music, even though I do agree we do not fit the mold in Astoria. And at times it's been sort of frustrating when there's like all this folk scene happening and it's like, man, we're the only indie rock, pop rock band on the coast here.
Yeah, I don't want to be the interviewer that's all presumptuous and tells you how you sound, so I'll do this. What made you who you are as far as a composer?
So the band started with the Killers. That was like
I knew
in
it.
college.
I should have said it. The Killers. The
Yeah.
Killers and some OK. Go. Okay. I'm done.
Yeah. So we were absolutely obsessed with the Killers in college when we started the band. So we started there and just quickly went into like Animal Collective and then the Beach Boys. As we moved to Astoria, I actually did develop an obsession with folk music. I mean, there was a folk renaissance at like 2008 where it was Fleet Foxes, and then there was of Monsters and Men and the Lumineers and a Blind Pilot from Astoria, and that was kind of making its way into our sound, but it didn't feel like us. I mean, we didn't start as a folk band, so that felt strange, and so that kind of quickly evolved into like the folk rock, and then the pop music. So then I did get completely obsessed with like Justin Bieber for a while,
as one does.
Yeah. That's a pretty wide range of stuff right there. I guess I can leave it at that.
You got this double stacked keyboard synth machine and you're pushing sound. And It sounds really good. And that's when I was like, man, is he in a local bar doing this?
Absolutely. I mean, Astoria has an appetite for dance. So we definitely played in the brew pubs here and people partied.
What kind of energy you have now? Well, let me just tell you, I know you have dad energy now.
Yeah.
How has that translated into rock star energy?
I think the dad energy absolutely helped me calm down about everything we were trying to do. It got harder and harder for me when anyone wasn't available for a gig or something, because we were getting further and further into our careers, and on the side I'm still like, yeah, but I want to be a musician, so how come you guys can't play the show? And it was getting like, if anyone was being annoying, it was probably me. The dad energy just tempered expectations, and it was like, dude, you need to chill out. It's been amazing watching my daughter grow to love our band naturally. I mean, I didn't try to make her like our music or anything, but we have band practice in the house, and it's her favorite night of the week because she gets to come down, and she's only 5, but she gets to come down and watch us. And
awesome.
I've written a song about her that she knows and loves, and she gets to come down and play on that song. She plays the tambourine, and best type of fan.
An integral part of the band.
It's incredible.
Well, very cool. Well, thanks for the time. I was curious about, your big sound, small town, and how that works.
Big sound, small town. I like that. Thanks for having me.
That's Scott Fagerlin of Holiday Friends. They are back from hiatus in a new chiller pop rock. It's like yacht rock, but dads, and a new chiller pop rock way, and putting out new music that you can find on music streaming platforms and at holidayfriendsmusic.com. Stay tuned for more music from Holiday Friends. And now time for the important business here, trivia. Every week, we'll give you 3 clues and reveal the answer at the end of the program. Here's your first clue. The answer to this week's trivia is the first ever national monument. That's it. That's all we're giving you. You are on your own. I mean, at least for the next, few minutes, because we'll come back with another clue. Also on the way, going to go to Florida, see what we can do about the Blackwater River. That's all coming up on Yonder Radio. This is Yonder Radio, and you are here. Thank you so much. These are Rural Conversations with National Reach. My name is Jared Ewey. I'm your host, and really excited to go on this next adventure. Daily Yonder contributor Taylor Sisk takes us to the Florida Panhandle. Taylor traveled to Milton, Florida, to speak with the folks behind a group called Save Blackwater River. The group's mission is to protect the river, which is one of the most pristine sand-bottom rivers in the world, from the local government's repeated attempts to build a wastewater treatment plant on its banks. Here's Taylor in Milton, Florida, with Pam Mitchell and David Samples, two of the driving forces behind Save Blackwater River.
Where are you from? Are you from this area?
I'm from here. I'm fourth generation from Milton. My family's always been real tied to the river. You know, as a child, I went fishing, and my granddaddy had a little boathouse, a decrepit old boathouse. My mother, you know, would talk about when she was a kid, they'd go up to the sandbars on the river and get Christmas trees and get this thorny bush that they'd put jelly beans and gumdrops and all on.
And you spent your whole life here?
Mm-hmm, I have.
But you.
This is as far as I've gotten from downtown Milton is out here on the river.
And raised a family in Milton?
I have two children, a boy and a girl, and Jerry has a daughter, and between our kids, we have 4 grandchildren.
And what kind of work have you done?
We started a small business called Blackwater Folk Art, and we made lawn and garden art out of recycled metals. So we salvaged old barn roofs and locally old barns, and traveled all over. We had a wholesale business where we, you know, went and took orders for it at trade shows like Atlanta and Dallas, New York, and Los Angeles. And I did that for about 35 years. And I was blessed to be able to retire from that when this really got kicking. And we did Save Blackwater River full time.
Are you from this area?
No, I'm not. I'm from the Detroit area.
I can kind of tell you're from somewhere else.
Yeah.
he doesn't have the accent.
No.
So, I came through here back in 1982. My name's Dave Samples. Went through flight school here, got the 3 W's. I got my wings, my wife, and my mother-in-law out of this area. So when I retired in 2005, we came back to the area here. We got the call from, you know, Pam and Jerry in about October of 2022 saying, you all need to come down to our house here and we need to talk about some stuff that was going on with the wastewater treatment plant. So that's when we got involved. My last job in the Marine Corps was at the Pentagon. So I worked for the Secretary of Defense up there on some big dollar rotary wing programs. But for Save Blackwater River, I was putting in longer days doing Save Blackwater River stuff than even at the Pentagon. We realized with this whole thing, you know, you just can't say, we think that's a bad idea, so we were trying to provide some alternatives. So that's what Save Blackwater River was. You know, it's not that we were against the wastewater treatment plant, but you're going to do, you know, critical infrastructure, put it on great property, not hand-me-down property that was really bad. The Save Blackwater River was getting the science and the data to show why this was bad, and then try to provide some alternatives.
You're president of
Save Blackwater River.
And then your role?
Chairperson of Milton's Concerned Citizens is a PAC.
Yeah.
But we're not a PAC like big dollar PAC. We, over 8 years, we've raised like $20,000. Okay. And we do influence the elections within the city of Milton.
Well, I know that.
But we do it by hard work, like boots on the ground volunteer work, because we're not very well moneyed at all. Milton's Concerned Citizens was just because we felt like the government of Milton was neither honest or transparent. The engineering studies for the land, if you read them, I mean, even as a layperson, you're thinking, why would they even think about this?
I don't think as an engineering company they did the due diligence that, you know, that they should have been doing.
But they said, so what? We're doing it anyway. Early on, they got a discharge permit for all their stormwater to come directly into the basin here where the federally endangered sturgeon. And we finally got the feds to where they said, we're taking our money back. And that was kind of the turning point because they realized that the property was not going to pass the NEPA review. That was kind of when the cards started toppling.
So you realized you had to be political.
The attorney said, look, you know, y'all y'all are going to have to win on the plant. You're going to have to do that politically because I can't do it administratively. So we set out, and that was like December 23, January of 24. And we started from that moment forward kind of finding candidates that we knew that supported Save Blackwater, that would vote for the river. And that's what the populace wanted. They wanted the river protected. They wanted the plant off of the river.
Did your candidates run on a platform of protecting the river?
Protecting the river and ending the drama.
How did things stand? Let's talk about how things stand now.
They're in the process of permitting. It is a new site. There was just some fear and trepidation about starting from square one. So what they did is they took the old design for the plant and they're applying it to the new property.
Would you have imagined yourself doing this work, this kind of activism?
My daughter one time, she told me when it first started happening, several of the newspaper articles called me an activist. She said, Mama, you tell them every time you open your mouth, you're an advocate. You are not an activist. You are an advocate. She was right. I'm not a bomb thrower. Let's change the heart of the people and let's educate them and make a difference.
This river is so integral to so many people's lives, taking the kids out, playing on it and stuff, and we just don't want it put at jeopardy.
The river is everyone's backyard, and that resonated with people. It really did.
That was journalist Taylor Sisk in conversation with Pam Mitchell and David Samples for A Rural Calling, a daily Yonder series about people throughout rural America who are making significant contributions to their communities. Next up on Yonder Radio, we're talking about maple. Big leaf maple, that is. Food journalist Nat Nichols takes us to Cold Snap Farm in Quilcene, Washington, where Daryl Dietrich is tapping trees and pushing for policy change to sell this special syrup.
What makes a great sugar maker is you have to be an excellent plumber because you're dealing with so much tubing and fittings, and you have to understand gravity and vacuum and how all of that works. You have to be a mechanic because you're using lots of equipment with little motors.
That's Daryl Dietrich, and on top of being a plumber, mechanic, and gravity expert, she's the owner of Cold Snap Farm in Quilcene, Washington. Daryl is one of a handful of big leaf maple syrup makers trying to bring their product to the people. Though syrup from sugar maples is common on everybody's breakfast table, most people don't even know that you can make syrup from a big leaf maple. But for a growing number of people like Daryl, it's quickly becoming a sweet obsession.
Well, firstly, I discovered that big leaf maple syrup was even a thing around 10 years ago.
At the time, Daryl had just started a farm with a friend, and she had already been foraging for food and medicinal plants for years. Then, when a friend handed her a book about tapping her own big leaf maple syrup, it felt like fate.
I was just instantly like, oh, this combines like everything that I'm doing, which is it's a wild food and it's farming. And so it just like fit really perfectly into my whole life.
It fits so well into Daryl's life that she's been on a mission not only to create her own big leaf maple farm, but also to change the laws in Washington state to make it easier for forest farmers like her to produce and sell maple syrup.
Washington hasn't really seemed to figure out what to do with us. And so right now they want us to have processing facilities or commercial kitchens. What I was told in the county is that the second the sap leaves the collection tank, it needs to be in a licensed facility, which is good. Licensing is great. Permitting is great.
Under the current law, potential maple tappers need a fully licensed facility with a working septic system, which Daryl says isn't viable for people whose sugar bush, that's the area of someone's forest where the maples have taps installed in them to collect sap, is way up in the woods. The cost for creating a full production facility, which is what Daryl is working towards, is so prohibitive that there are only a few producers of big leaf syrup in all of Washington state. In states that have a tradition of tapping sugar maples, the laws for sugar makers, that's the preferred term for syrup producers, aren't so restrictive. So, on top of developing her own syrup, raising capital for processing equipment, building infrastructure on her property, and tapping her trees, Daryl is working with other advocates to change Washington state law to be more friendly to small-time sugar makers.
Essentially like a cottage kitchen law. You can bake your bread in your house and then sell it to the public. You can only sell $35,000 worth of products because it's a safe food, and that's fine. But there just aren't laws for syrup right now that make sense and are pragmatic for the whole situation. Syrup is one of the safest possible foods you can make because you literally boil it for hours upon hours. It's not really feasible for a lot of small forest landowners to want to make a few gallons of syrup.
In 2023, Oregon added maple syrup to the list of foods already in the state's farm direct marketing law, giving it the same legal standing as fresh produce, eggs, honey, and some jams. Daryl's watched how the big leaf maple market has developed for her neighbors one state to the south since the law has changed.
It's helping local economies, it's helping forest landowners, it's helping farmers, it's helping local food systems and resiliency. So Washington really needs to kind of get on that.
Okay, enough about the legalities around producing it in Washington state. The big question is there a difference between big leaf maple syrup and sugar maple syrup? What does big leaf maple syrup taste like?
Some of the flavor differences are that ours seem a bit more molassesy, vanilla, caramel, and not as much your typical, like what you view as a maple flavor.
I personally think that big leaf syrup is different to sugar maple syrup in the same way that rye is different from bourbon. The big leaf syrup is just a little more complex, a touch more savory. It's used more as an ingredient in things like cocktails than it is as something you can douse your pancakes in. For Daryl, the benefits of sugaring are more than just a delicious thing you can eat.
I would love for people to make their own syrup. Even if you just have a couple trees on your property, you can make syrup. And it's really fun for you. It's fun if you got kids and friends and neighbors. You're standing around. And it's really good for exercise in the winter. Like, I no longer have seasonal depression because I'm out in the woods all the time, working with the maple trees.
Hopefully Daryl's vision inspires you to get out in the woods and try tapping some of your own trees. If you do, let me know how it goes. I'm Nat Nichols for Yonder Radio.
That was food journalist Nat Nichols reporting from Quilcene, Washington. And now, let's bring in the band. This is Holiday Friends and one of their songs, Everything, on Yonder Radio.
Chugging, but we still don't know a lot of things. There's a light on in your kitchen, and I'm standing still, breathing in. Wash your dish in your burn light, and feel your body next to mine. Hey, I got a little carried away in my mind. Okay, I've been known to do that from time to time. Summer in North Idaho, it's a warm and quiet time. But I know that you've gotta go. The leaves will slowly turn and die. That was a long time ago. Now we're keeping to ourselves, but we wanna remember fast. Walking to class in early December. Meet a friend that lives next door. We'll pine over Paramore. There's a reason we don't stay young. If we could, we'd never be broken. That was a long...
Holiday Friends and their song, Everything. Before we go to break, we have yet another trivia clue. This national monument And that was your first clue. This was the first national monument in America. This national monument is an igneous rock formation, specifically a laccolithic butte that dominates the horizon in Crook County in northeastern Wyoming. On the way, laccolithic buttes, along with an interview about rural healthcare transformation and how to ingratiate yourself into new communities on Yonder Radio. This is Yonder Radio. How you doing? My name is Jared Ewey. I'm your host, and what happens here are rural conversations with national reach. And we just gather around on the audio back porch here and get into big stories like what's about to happen right now with KFF Health News Chief Rural Health Correspondent Sarah Jane Tribble. Sarah has been tracking the rollout and spending of President Trump's $50 billion Rural Health Transformation Fund, which was created in July 2025 when the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was signed into law. Sarah, okay, can you start out by telling us the story of this fund? Why was it created?
The problems and the challenges for healthcare in rural America stem back decades, and Congress has tried to address it for decades. So fast forward to July 2025. The administration and the Republican Congress is trying to pass a massive tax and spending bill that we all know as the Big Beautiful Bill Act is what it's officially called now. And in that, they voted for cutting spending on the Medicaid programs. When you begin talking about cutting that big federal state program, the rural hospitals and rural clinics across the U.S. get very nervous. They know how much they depend on that money. And so the $50 billion that we're talking about today is a sweetener for the cuts for the Medicaid. So what Congress did is they negotiated it and said, if you're going to cut Medicaid, let's give rural America a boost because we already know it needs it.
This is where it gets dramatic. This is where we have the $50 billion elephant in the rural room. How will this be administered? Who is getting what?
Yeah, so after the law became written and after CMS wrote the regulations on it, it became pretty clear that rural hospitals weren't at the center of where the money was going to go. And then $50 billion is not really enough to cover the expected cuts from the Medicaid program that is being slashed, which is going to be cut by nearly $1 trillion over a decade across the U.S. And just for rural America, that's $137 billion, according to the number crunchers who are at KFF on the policy side. When the $50 billion was voted on, it was designated for $10 billion a year, right? And so CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, at the federal level is in charge of distributing this money, and they had the states do a competition. The governors of each state had to come up with a plan, an application, and it was a very specific application that the administration came up with, like 62 pages for the narrative, a budget thing, and they had to be scored on points. So this competition included what I like to call sort of a college essay-like competition. The states had to fill out an application.
Like a bureaucratic version of Hunger Games right now. That's what I'm getting.
That's exactly what it was. The application itself said, we need you to focus on workforce, creating jobs for rural healthcare providers, because we know we're short on those. We need you to focus on technology was a big one, a very big one that we're hearing a lot about. So there's initiatives that the states can do, but then there's also these health policy items like the presidential fitness test. If a state committed to doing mandating presidential fitness test, then they may have gotten some points for that. If they committed to maybe making sure that their SNAP waivers provided a certain kinds of food, healthier foods, according to the administration, that would also get more points.
So now you're, in a sense, a sports reporter as you follow this 50-state horse race to score points for rural health transformation money. And you tell me, and you use the phrase, there's a lot to unpack. And this is regarding what rural hospitals had expected. What is the story there? Because I think they thought they were going to be getting the bulk of this money. What has happened since?
Rural hospitals go into this debate last summer knowing that they are struggling, right? Like these are hospitals that are on very thin margins of profits. Rural hospitals have been closing across America at a fast clip for more than 2 decades. The rural hospitals really were counting on and wanting this money because they knew they would be losing money on the other end from, patients that didn't have coverage under Medicaid. And the states know this. But then when they look at the applications are asking for a transformation. And the idea isn't to benefit these rural hospitals that have existed forever. In fact, Some would say it's good money after bad. Like if you keep supporting the rural hospitals, that's not necessarily the way this money should be spent. We should spend it transforming the way rural care is delivered in rural America altogether.
Well, before the transformation, there must be transition, and you are there reporting on the administration of the transition to make the transformation. I'm working on a new Dr. Seuss book to simplify this whole thing. Well, thank you so much, Sarah Jane Tribble. Looking forward to more news from KFF Health News and your intrepid reporting.
Thanks, Jared.
Once again, that was Sarah Jane Tribble with KFF Health News. She'll be helping us keep an eye on the Rural Health Transformation Fund as that story develops. Up next, we have a conversation between Daily Yonder reporter Julia Tilton and Alex Seitz-Wald, the deputy editor of the Midcoast Villager, which is a weekly print newspaper in Camden, Maine. The paper covers the state's rural Midcoast region and was founded in September 2024 as a merger of 4 legacy newspapers whose roots stretch back to 1829. But here's what else makes the Midcoast Villager unique. Not only is it a hard-hitting rural newspaper, it's got an out-of-the-box model for revenue and community engagement. The Villager Cafe occupies the ground floor of the newsroom building on Camden's Main Street. It opened in May 2025, shortly after Alex Seitz-Wald, the editor, took the job upstairs. Julia spoke to Alex, who went to Maine after a decade covering politics for NBC News in Washington, D.C., to see how it's all working out.
Moving to Maine, I have realized that, like in a lot of other rural places, trust is earned, not given. And so I'm curious, because you also recently moved here, and even though, you have some ties, you could live here for, 57 years and not be a Mainer.
Never. I will never be a Mainer. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do you navigate trust building when you're still kind of an outsider in this community?
It's a thing I think about a lot, and that I did think about and worried about when I was thinking about taking this job. And I love what you said about it, trust is earned. Like, I think that's right. Don't pretend to be something you're not, first of all. It's kind of like a joke that there's a Maine caste system, but you have to respect and I do respect the Maine caste system, and I will never be a Mainer, and I admire Mainers. And yeah, I think just like being humble and not pretending to be anything you're not. And then just like try to be really curious and open-minded and listen and follow people's leads. We had 4 newspapers that each covered individual towns, or 3 of them covered individual towns, and those now got rolled together into one newspaper. So there are some people who really miss having a dedicated newspaper to just covering their town, which I completely understand. And I wish we lived in a world where we could support 4 independent newspapers. So it's easy to get bent out of shape when somebody from one of those towns is like, you don't cover our town as much. But I think you hear that, you take any valuable information that is from that, and then you just show up every day and hope that over time, I look forward to earning their trust. And we've seen that happen in the year that we've been doing this.
So downstairs is the Villager Cafe. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that and how that fits into this whole thing that you guys are doing.
Yeah, it's huge. It's really cool, and I think sets us apart from almost anyone else. Mm-hmm. It is right in that sweet spot of being active members of the community. Coffee shops or restaurants or bars, third places they're called, are they're gathering spaces for the community naturally. And I didn't even know this the cafe launched in May. I didn't even know this, but historically, newspapers actually come out of pubs and coffee houses in the 1600s in London and Amsterdam, because before there was printing presses, that's where you would go to find out what was going on. So then that's where they started printing and distributing newspapers from. So there's actually a very real historical record there. So it is just a cafe. There are plenty of people just come in for coffee or lunch, and that's great. But it's also a place that can help us connect with the community, be visible in the community, and also for the community, we've opened it up. The community can use it, and I've loved to see that people just understanding the assignment and running with it. There's a monthly politics group and we don't have anything to do with these. These are just self-organized things, but we put out the call and the space, please use this space for, civic discussions, that kind of stuff. We have these regular events, every Friday. I usually call it Fresh Brewed News, which is just paper comes out on Thursday. So we go over what's in that editions of the paper. What it ends up being is just open discussion, office hours. People just ask, like, oh, so how do you choose a story? How does the advertising work? Which I think is really important for trust. Like that, I think we need to be as transparent as we expect government to be. And I think the cafe is like a big part of that.
What do you think people want from local news that, from your experience working for a national news organization, the national news can't maybe provide?
Certainly, the CNN and the New York Times is not going to cover the Rockland City Council meeting, or that's a bigger one. But even like I live in Lincolnville, like the Lincolnville Select Board meeting, certainly not. And so if we don't cover those things, literally no one will. Mm-hmm. And I came from a world where like I was one of 50 reporters, sometimes like hundreds of reporters at some political event. That was going to get covered. Like there's no danger of, a Joe Biden speech
flying under the radar.
But they're all the time now. Like I go to events, or my colleagues go to things where we are the only reporters there. And if we don't cover it, it will not get covered. And that means not only for now, but there also won't be like a historical record. Like we think about that a lot, because we use like our papers, our predecessor papers go back to the 1800s, and it's such a valuable resource. So, we're creating that resource. So that's one thing. Speaking to the community from an understanding of the community, like I think is huge. I think we all agree, like there are too many reporters in New York and DC and not enough in the rest of the country. Mm-hmm. And then finally, I think I think this is probably true broadly of local news, but I can only really speak. I think people here love this place. And that's probably true in a lot of places, but like really here. And people love seeing their community and the best parts of it reflected in the paper, and reading about that really interesting thing going on. Because it's a place where like it feels like around like every driveway could be some amazing hidden, an artist doing really cool stuff, or some like niche car manufacturer. Like these are actual stories, so there's so many like hidden little secret stories around here, and people love reading about that and seeing what they love about their community reflected in it. So, and that's a different thing too, where I feel like we're champions of the community and sort of spokespeople for it to the outside world, but also to itself, mm-hmm. while also having to maintain that critical distance. And if there's also bad things that happen here, and we cover all of those horrible things too, because that's reality.
That was Alex Seitzwald, deputy editor of the Midcoast Villager in Camden, Maine, talking with Daily Yonder reporter Julia Tilton. All right, are you ready for the last trivia hint for this week? After this hint, we'll be revealing the answer. Here we go. This laccolithic butte, which is an incredible phrase, was featured prominently in Steven Spielberg's 1977 film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Yeah, you remember that music. Do you have your answer ready? Drum roll, please. And the answer is Devil's Tower. This iconic rock formation in Wyoming has a lot of names, but the official one, according to the National Park Service, is Devil's Tower, which was designated as the country's first national monument by President Theodore Roosevelt on September 16, 1906. One of the most spectacular features of Devil's Tower is its vertical pillar-like formations, 6 to 10 feet wide, stretching from the bottom to the top. In many indigenous stories about the rock formation, this vertical scoring was created by the claws of a bear as it attempted to climb the tower. The massive cliff stands over 1,200 feet above the nearby Belforce River. It is made of rare igneous rock called phonolite porphyry and was formed around 50 million years ago. But the exact story of its formation is still a mystery to scientists. I mean, come on, we know it was a bear, who have put forth a number of competing theories, but haven't reached a consensus. But we do have a consensus about you. Pander alert. You're great, because you listening means that we're here, and that's our goal. So thank you so much. You can listen to our podcast and learn more at yonderradio.com. Thank you for listening to Yonder Radio, a production of the Center for Rural Strategies, publisher of the Daily Yonder. I'm your host, Jared Ewey. The Living Tradition segment was produced by Nicole Musgrave. Thanks to Don Castle and the Tennessee Sheiks, Steph Gunno and the Lone Tones, Quincy Ponfair, Leo Pozell, and Tim Merima for the great music. Our editor and producer is Susanna Brown. This episode was also produced by Anya Patron-Slepian with additional support from Alana Newman and Julia Tilton. Our executive producer is Joel Cohen. The executive in charge of production is Adam Georgie. Yonder Radio, Rural Conversations with National Reach.